Lonesome Lands podcast. This is the Lonesome Report. It is April 9th, 8:49 p.m. We're up past our bedtimes. This episode, we're going to talk about a lot of different things. We're going to give an update kind of on I feel like me and Shad this last week, we've just kind of really focused on one issue, and that has been this mod case that we talked about on the last episode. We're going to talk about that and then a number of other things and kind of give some new information that keeps popping up. This episode is brought to you by Oklahoma Independent Stock Growers Association, which Shad, I called you Chad for the first time ever, which Shad is a proud member of.
I am.
Tell us all the great things about them.
Cattle producers in Oklahoma decided they wanted to put together an independent association away from OCA that represented their best interests. And I happened to be at the inaugural meeting the very first night. I don't know what year it was. It's probably been 6 or 7 years ago, up at the Chain Ranch in Oklahoma. From what I understand, there are people in the other associations that are not representing these cattle producers, and they want out. And their main issue, I happened to go speak at a meeting this week, and their main issue is RFID, EID. We want out. OCA's pushing it. We want out. We're going over to OSIA. So if you feel so inclined, call that Andrea Hutchinson, Joshua Canope, the board of directors. There's a lot of them. And join up.
All right. We have a lot of people that follow and that aren't really that involved in the ag industry, but they like following on. If you want, and they're always, what can we do to help? What can we do to help? Is find these organizations like Oklahoma Independent Stock Growers and stockholders, independent stockholders,
Stock growers.
stock growers,
Yep.
and you can support them no matter where you are. So if you just Google up Oklahoma Independent Stock Growers Association, and there's different way. I'm sure you can become a member no matter where you are.
Yep. You can.
You look them up on Facebook, Oklahoma
Yep.
Independent Stock Growers, and that's what we need. All these issues that we talk about, they're the kind of group that helps with them, and all the things that we're going to talk about today.
That's right.
So, I guess yesterday I came out with a video called um, Patagonia buying up ranches. That's what was in the thumbnail. I guess first thing off on that, I should make it clear it's not the country of Patagonia. And that's after I published it, I was like, oh, I should have made that more. In the title, I wrote Patagonia CO, meaning company, is buying up South Dakota ranch land. Um, and if you haven't watched that video, I'll link to it in the description. But it pretty much last week we talked about this Maude case, which is a young couple who is being indicted for stealing government property. Did I get that right?
Theft of government property.
Theft of government property, which they're facing up to 10 years in prison. They've each been indicted separately. It's over a fence that they've never moved. It's been there since 1950, and one Forest Service special agent, Travis Lunders, decided that they're stealing this ground. Why, nobody really knows, and it doesn't make any sense. And that's why people like me are searching and trying to find what is going on in this neighborhood. And as I searched, a lot of people in the neighborhood talk about a rancher who was buying up ground for buffalo, for his buffalo ranch, um, and so Cheyenne River Buffalo Ranch is what his ranch is called. And so as I was searching around on the Platte website of the county, I found this other buffalo ranch called Bison Ranch LLC. And Bison Ranch LLC has bought what looks like a corridor, kind of shooting off of the federal lands that hooked into the Buffalo Gap Wilderness area, and which eventually hooks into the Badlands National Park. And as I researched this, I realized that the Buffalo Bison Ranch LLC has the same address as the Patagonia Well, it's not the headquarters. The address that comes up is the Patagonia Child Development Center. So I just put two and two together because if you know anything about the Patagonia company, they are a clothing, I don't know if they're a clothing company that's an environmental activist on the side, or if they're environmental activists at this point now that is a clothing company on the side. Um, and so they have bought, I think close to 6,000 acres there, and it's all kind of pointing, it goes from the wilderness area up to another one of Charles Maude's properties. And it also ties into USDA land that's kind of out in the middle also. And Charles Maude and his uncle own properties in the middle of it all. And so I just thought maybe that has something to do with these ridiculous charges that nobody seems to understand why they exist. Um, and so I brought that up. And I guess a couple updates on that. First one, Patagonia. It's not the country of Patagonia. Um, And the second one, I've been contacted by a number of people who told me in 2022, Yvon Chouinard, which is he's the big head of Patagonia, and I read his book years ago, and in the first paragraph, I thought this guy is such an asshole because in the first paragraph he says I am not a businessman. Like, and he just craps all over being a businessman, because he wears t-shirts and flip-flops and he can't be a businessman, even though he created this billion-dollar empire. But that's their whole marketing spiel. Marketing is everything and everything is marketing. So he puts out this spiel like he's not this businessman. And he's just an old rock climber that just happened to stumble into this business that was, just became a billion-dollar business. Um, but anyway, the other thing I hated in that book, like I'll say this, he's a genius marketer, and the way he ran that business was genius, but um, he's also kind of a nut, a big time environmental nut,
Is he
because
alive today,
yeah,
Jim?
but the thing is, in 2022, he gave 2% of it to I can't remember, but 98% of it, he gave the business ownership, he turned ownership over to what's called Hold Fast something. Alliance, I think Hold Fast Alliance. And they are strictly an environmental activist group. I mean, it's
Oh,
his. He created the group, and then
okay.
he gave the
Yeah.
ownership of the company to that group, meaning they get all the profits just
Yeah.
to do their environmental activism. And so
I've
there's
not
this,
heard of that group.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. All these things happen. I mean, I've never heard of Bison Ranch LLC. You know what I
Well,
mean? I
that's
mean,
true.
all these kind of things. It's like, I don't know. Why buy up land in South Dakota? Why come in and what I've heard from neighbors is that they've come in and undercut, and no one knew no one had ever heard of Bison Ranch. They all assumed it was the Cheyenne River. That was from the people I've talked to. They assumed it was the Cheyenne River that was buying up the land, which also happens to be. So this Dan O'Brien is the owner of the Cheyenne River. He's the one in that neighborhood, as kind of thought of as a neighborhood rancher. Which if you look into these things, that's if you want to buy land in a neighborhood, it would be smart to find a neighborhood rancher who's buying land and use him kind of as your go-between. Um, and so yeah, the people I talked to in that neighborhood had no idea that Patagonia or who this bison ranch was. One thing is that this Cheyenne River Ranch and Dan O'Brien's Wild Idea Company, which is where he sells his buffalo products, I believe, they're partnered with Patagonia, and they supply Patagonia with buffalo leather. And I don't know if they sell their jerky through there
Meat
or
and stuff.
I don't know but I
Hmm.
know you'll find all kinds of information about this Wild Idea Buffalo and Cheyenne River Ranch through the Patagonia website. Um, and my point was, I believe that they were, so the big update today, my point in that video is I thought that it looked like they were creating a wildlife corridor, which if you look at Patagonia's website in 2018, they, they really they created this initiative, which was called Freedom to Roam, where they wanted to create these wildlife
Mm,
corridors where animals could move more freely between federal lands, is kind of what it's came out to be. And if you look at a map between Custer State Park, which is a large, there's called a wildlife loop, which is a large, and they have a large buffalo herd there. And then the Badlands also has a large amount of buffalo. And so this Patagonia, this Bison Ranch LLC land hooks into that federal land. Um, and it looks like they're creating a wildlife corridor. So I guess the main update is I would like to correct that because I don't know if they're trying to buy up a wildlife corridor. Because I think they're just after every acre of ranch
sure.
land between the Buffalo Gap Wilderness Area and Custer State Park. If you look at it on a map, it's kind of like a U shape. If up in the northern county, there's federal land almost all the way across there, straight east of Rapid City, and it's just boxed in. And in one of the edges of the box is where this lawsuit is happening, and where one of the Park Service people is arresting ranchers and threatening them with prison time and all that. The big update, I guess, which made me change my mind on this, was a number of people, mainly this Kyle, who helped a lot with the information on that video. He sent me stuff and said you should look into Nature Conservancy. They just bought the 777 Ranch, and then a number of
Mm,
other people commented and said the same thing. So if you look at a map, um, and you saw that map, and maybe I'll try to work one in here. I'm not good at that, but now the Nature Conservancy, which is a conservation activist group, that takes over ranches and just their goal is to turn them back to the wild. They have bought 25,000 acres that stretches from the Buffalo Gap Wilderness area almost completely to um, Custer State Park. Um, And so I guess that, I mean, that kind of, it's like, it makes what I showed it makes the Patagonia land, which is around 6,000 acres, and that corridor area, it
uh-huh.
makes it look like nothing.
Little. Yeah.
Yeah. But then if
Well,
you zoom out and look at that entire area,
yeah,
and you look at you look at the Cheyenne River, Buffalo Ranch, you look at the Patagonia land, you look at Nature Conservancy, and you look at USDA. So those four entities own the vast majority of all that land in that
sure.
area. And two of the other landowners in that area are Charles and Heather Maude.
So in this sale of the Nature Conservancy, was this land that they bought, was it privately owned already, I'm assuming, or yeah, it
What
was,
people
right?
told me, it was the 777, the
Okay.
family that owned the 777, the
Okay.
father that kind of built it up. Um, he died, and the two daughters sold it. Um,
And they sold it directly to Nature Conservancy, no partnership or anything like this. This is where it gets sticky because, say in Colorado, we're talking about public-private partnerships again. And, the State Land Board of Colorado and the Nature Conservancy partner up. And, one buys the ranch and then hands the reins over to the other, and vice
hmm
versa, right? And
hmm
those are the public-private partnerships that we've been talking about. But if they are, they have an unlimited amount of money, right? I mean, that's just the truth. Uh, you know, from Data Republic and Nature Conservancy, $567 million
Yeah, I believe that was last year. And so that's the
last
main
year.
problem because I've talked about this, like American Prairie Reserve. I don't know where their money comes from, but I mentioned one time, well, people get mad about it, but if you're for property rights, you should be able to buy land and do what you want with it.
Well, here's the
Um,
problem. They're taking this, they are taking these federal funds, and these are
yeah.
federal funds. And they get those through public-private partnerships. They get funds through donations, and they make billions of dollars a year, hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and then they go and their goal is to preserve so much land by 2030 or 2050, and they go buy land that's worth $300 an acre and they give $3,000 an acre, thereby eliminating any competition with the native people or ranchers or farmers, and then all of a sudden it's taken out of production and their agenda is pushed. Now here's the deal. You a landowner has every right to sell who he wants to, right? That's not an issue. If that family wanted to sell to the Nature Conservancy, that's fine. But when the communities die, and they are dying, the schools close, the churches close, the grocery stores are gone, that's on their shoulders. Now, there's one thing for me, there's one thing to say, we need to get all the money we can, but there's another thing to say, how do we want to leave this? What is our legacy on this? So, it is where I'm really upset about all of this stuff. And, you can read about the Nature Conservancy in Wyoming. Their plan is to, Wyoming's like Southeast Colorado, it's a checkerboard state. And they want all of that checkerboard land as federal land or state land, and they want access to that. This wildlife corridor you're talking about, that's not conspiracy. That's not anything.
Yeah, somebody said that those things just don't exist.
That's
It's
that's
all
not
over the
true.
Patagonia website.
That's not true. They do exist,
And
and
they're
they're talking
promoted by Patagonia, who's buying this land
absolutely.
that looks like a corridor.
The 1993 map from the Center for Biological Diversity has wildlife corridors on it. And they have recently brought that map back out in the last 2 years for everybody to see because they're proud of it. And now
Well,
we have wolf introduction into Colorado. We have ENGOs buying ranches in southeast Colorado and making wildlife preserves out of them. And then all of a sudden, guess what they're talking about? A wildlife corridor from the Eastern Plains back to the Front Range and the Rocky Mountains.
we need and
These,
all
you
like
know,
you always say ENGOs. I feel like we need to quit using that word. If you're
why?
getting over $500 million from the federal government in a year, which is the Nature Conservancy, according to Data Republican,
Yeah.
567 million some dollars. And I think there's probably more because they're like a subcontractor in a ton of these deals. You're not an NGO. You're a
But this
government
is what we have to
organization,
bring.
right?
Well,
This
this is
is
what, go ahead.
taxpayer
Mhm.
the American taxpayers buying
Yep,
this land up. You are
that's right.
taking land out of production away from American farmers and ranchers,
That's
and
right.
you're buying this land up. That's where, I mean, when you give $500 million to one corporation and they come in and buy 25,000 acres, you imagine their neighbors like or someone who might have been interested, if you're a kid and you want a ranch and you want to be able to buy land in
No
your
chance.
community
No
in
chance.
Patagonia and the Nature Conservancy are coming in and buying everything up.
You talked about the American Prairie Reserve in Montana. That is funded by the World Wildlife Fund. According to Data Republican, last year the World Wildlife Fund received $116 million, $238,601.
Yeah, all these corporate, I mean, they are government organizations.
And
But the
a
thing
lot of
about
this
it,
is
good to
coming
go
through the
back,
NRCS.
yeah, to go back to Brett Kinsey, like why public-private partnerships need to exist is because the private company can do things the public one can't, and the public one can do things the private one can't, like throw people in jail. You know what I mean? And the private ones can buy the land, and the public ones can throw the ranchers in jail. I mean, that's just how it works. And so, yeah, these things just there's so many unintended. I wouldn't even say unintended consequences, but just things that
No, these
people don't
consequences are
realize
intended. They are
about.
intended.
But when these kind of things come out, okay, Nature Conservancy bought 25,000 acres, um, but you don't see the schools closing. You don't see kids don't have a big enough kids for their sports teams. You don't see, all the small business in town that used to do business with 20 or 30 different ranchers. Now they have one big company that, brings in a few college interns in the summer. And, I mean, these communities used to support hundreds of businesses, and now there's very few. Like if you look at I don't know how many acres are in there, but the number of
The
landowners.
tire. Hey, this is all about getting it's not just wildlife corridors, it's human corridors and getting them centralized. And there are no more tire stores. There are no more you might have a convenience store. You're damn sure going to have a Dollar General because they're there to take the rest of the wealth out of the small community, and then they'll just close the building and go on and let it fall apart. I have experience with the Nature Conservancy, and that is the organization that put the seed in me of corruption. And I'll never forget what we went through with the Nature Conservancy. And they were on a mission to get a lot of acres, and they got them. And they got them through these public-private partnerships, funded by the federal government or funded by the people of America. And it's almost like something else I know. We're funding our own demise, right? But the whole deal is, Jim, is that this leadership, say at USDA, unless you have been born and raised in the West, you don't understand these issues. And these issues are deep in USDA. I promise you, there are holdover employees at USDA that were pushing these agendas in the Biden administration. They're there.
Yeah.
Now, because Trump got elected, they probably melt back a little bit and they're a little quieter because they
The
don't want,
bureaucrats are still there.
they're still there. They don't want to lose their jobs. But these are real issues that need to get to leadership. They need to know about this abuse of funds, and that's what Doge is all about, right? I mean, that's what Doge was created for, is to see where all this money was going. I mean, and they're not just fully funded by the taxpayer; they're funded by their members too. They're funded by other countries, European Union. They're funded by all of these. They know how to go out and get that money. And I'll say it again. I'll say it 100 times. It's all about the land. It's all about the land.
Yeah, and this whole issue, I feel like it's everything we talk about. 140,000 small farms and ranches out of business, disappeared in the last 5 years. 107,000 small cattle farms and ranches disappeared in the last 5 years. Um, and we have the smallest beef herd that we've had since when, Chad? 70 years.
1950.
Yeah, in the past 70 years, we have the smallest amount of cattle. Well, what's gonna, they all blame it on a drought. Well, I wonder if 25,000 acres turn into a buffalo ranch, or, however many acres are going on in western South Dakota. Up in Pennington County, there's another company. I always heard that from a guy from Florida came in, and it's called Cheyenne River just LLC, and he owns thousands and thousands of acres, and it all butts into that USDA land, that federal land up in Pennington County, which is just north of Custer. So this is going on throughout all of western South Dakota. And when you look at a map of that, when somebody sent me that, look at what Nature Conservancy owns. After I did that video, and then I type them into that website, and you click on map, and it shows everything that they own. I was like, oh God. Like this wildlife corridor that I'm talking about ain't nothing compared to what's down just south of there. The
Well,
amount
I
of
mean,
land owned and how it butts right into the federal land, and it's
yeah,
pointed right at that wildlife loop.
they
I mean, it's the south end of, it's further south, but it's right there.
they know exactly what they're doing. And Jim, it's not like I'm against buffalo. I'm not.
I know, I
If
love
there's
them.
if
That's what
there's a mark,
I'm
if
starting to
there's
be. I'm starting
yeah,
to be very
yeah.
against them.
I mean, I love that. And if there's a market for it, that's great. But when you take federal funds, or you have these massive ENGOs that have unlimited supply of money, and you create an uneven playing field for producers out there, that's not the American way.
Yeah. And another
That's not.
thing, that if you look at Patagonia's website, their article about Wild Idea, which is Dan O'Brien's company, they talk about the damage, how damaging, it's so much better for buffalo to be raised in the prairie than it is for cattle to be raised in feedlots. So they kind of they don't completely trash cattle, but they make it seem like buffalo are so much more environmentally conscious
Yeah.
um, type of animals, and that's just BS. They're way less efficient as far as turning turning their feed into meat, and That's why we raise cattle. So, but yeah, they're becoming kind of the animal, almost the mascot for ranchers who want to buy into this sustainability thing. I mean, there is so many of them that got this sustainability money and all of this stuff, and that goes back to this federal money. These, that I just can't imagine. I mean, it's just so disappointing to the point where we have a hard time even talking about it. That our country now is giving all of this money to these companies, and they're buying up ranch land with it.
And of course, there's always going to be abuse, just like there is in our industry. They figure out how to cheat the system and they create more LLCs and they get more government money and all of that. I mean, it's a age old story, but you hate to see the people who won the West. You hate to see them suffer like what we've been seeing the mods suffer. It's really a travesty, is what it is.
Yeah, and the same with all this ranch. It's just the great American land grab. I feel like it's just that's what we're witnessing.
Oh,
I'm sure we've
absolutely.
never seen anything like this
And it's not
in
new,
our
Jim.
history.
It's not new. This
No,
isn't
but it's
new.
been accelerated. That's what I mean. That's what I've talked about for the last year.
Well, it was
The $3 billion,
accelerated.
this climate smart commodity deal,
Yeah.
Vilsack's USDA, they
Yeah.
put the pedal to the metal on it.
That was the 30
Foreign
by
money.
30, the America the
Hmm.
Beautiful. That was that program. And they knew that they had a limited amount of time to do it. And now Trump has to waste a lot of time undoing it. If we ever will. And I don't think we will because there's still those bureaucrats in these agencies that believe in that agenda, you know?
Yes.
And listen, it's not new. The United Nations in 1989 said because of climate change, half of America will be underwater by the year of 2000, right? Come on. I mean, that's the crap that we're dealing with right now, that ideology.
Well,
It's a
that
lie.
it all
And they
goes
know it's
back
a
to it.
lie.
If you go, that's what I realized. It all goes back to the climate deal. While all
Yeah.
this money, like that's the whole Patagonia thing. If you go on their website, that's what made me realize it. Like everything we were told back in the 90s by people like Rush Limbaugh and all these conservative people is they just want to control everything.
Everything.
And then if you look at what's going on now, even Yvon Chouinard's Patagonia, they've bought all in on this climate deal. He gave ownership over to this climate activist. Their main point is we're going to save the world from this climate change. And then, then they just come in and control these neighborhoods and control. I mean, it's getting to the point where they're controlling agriculture in certain neighborhoods, property
Well, there's no
values. They're
doubt about that.
controlling. Yeah, I mean, it's the country, rural America is being taken over by this climate. I mean, if
Absolutely.
you drive down any interstate, it's windmill after windmill, and now they're working on solar panels, and then it's, who owns the land? It's everything.
The climate change lie, and it's all about sustainable development. It's all about collectivism. They want what you have, and they don't want you to have what you have, right? That's what it
Yeah.
is. It's collectivism. It's communism.
All right, Meitler
All right.
cattle. If you want to buy some bulls and support some good ranchers that are dedicated to the same ideals that we talk about every week on here. Meitler Cattle, April 12th, is having their bull and female sale. Hereford Angus F1 black white face, both bulls and cows, April 12th. If you can't make it to Lucas, Kansas, you can view and bid everything on DV auction.
Super good cattle too.
Yes.
Beautiful Hereford cattle.
in a
Woo.
in a, in a family that's they're the kind of people we want to support, and they want to support what we're doing, so
Hey,
it's
they're
a
not
great.
just dedicated to their family, they're dedicated to their community and their country.
Yeah, we that's what we want is
That's
ranchers
what
like
we
that.
want.
I mean, it's the
Yes.
complete opposite of this kind of stuff.
Yes.
These, yeah, I don't know.
That's right, buddy.
All right, I think we got everything there.
Well, speaking of, you want to talk about something pretty cool uh, on the tails of ENGOs and climate change, the Nature Conservancy. Today we get to celebrate a little bit of a win. Um, Representative Boebert out of Colorado, who's a Republican, and a guy by the name of Tom Tiffany out of Wisconsin, who is a Republican, introduced the pet and the it's the Pet and Livestock Protection Act. And what it was it's to protect farmers and ranchers and urban families from the damage that these wolves are bringing. I'll remind our listeners that a couple of weeks ago, the state of Colorado had to reimburse through tax dollars producers to the tune of almost $400,000 for wolf depredation. So Lauren Boebert's like, we got to get these wolves off the endangered species list. Well, today they got that out of committee. It was passed out of the Natural Resources Committee, and it looks like it might go forward. So that's very very exciting.
So
Um,
I got a question.
American, our friends, American Stewards of Liberty was a part of that. They went up there and testified, so that was great. Go ahead.
I got two questions
I
on
may not be able
since
to answer them,
I
bro.
yeah. How much them people so two people had their dogs killed. What do they get reimbursed?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know who polices that. Well, I know who polices it, the Park Service or Colorado Parks and Wildlife, but I don't know who decides on who gets what. I just don't know.
Okay,
And
and then
go ahead.
so I'm assuming there's like a federal endangered list because they're not endangered in Wyoming, but they are
That's
endangered.
what this is. That's what I'm talking about. This bill would delist them off the federal endangered species list.
And so that would make it to where no state could
It is the
list have
gray
them.
wolf. That's correct. That's what it would do.
No state would have.
Yeah, they wouldn't be listed on the endangered species list. So I think that's a bit of a win for, Western ranchers. Listen, the wolf depredations in Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado right now are bad. They are bad. I mean, I keep track of it. Down there in New Mexico, these people are getting their asses handed to them by the wolves, and it's a pretty bad deal. So that's some exciting legislation that's going on.
I had another question.
Yes, sir.
Did you see the dire wolves?
I saw the dire wolves.
So I read a little bit about that. That's one thing I looked into a little bit. I think it's a bunch
Okay.
of BS because they said they're not really dire wolves. What they did was they took
Yeah,
certain traits of the DNA and put it in with a gray wolf, which is their closest relative.
right.
So what they really are gray wolves with some sort of traits
Well,
similar to
I
dire
guess my
wolves
question is where did they get the dire wolf DNA?
from like the fossils.
Okay.
That's what they
All right.
said. But I don't know why they couldn't clone it completely, but it's not like a complete clone of a dire wolf. It's
Well, the lady I saw interview on it, she said this is a dire wolf.
yeah, of course they're going to say
And
that because they want
I
all the
yeah.
praise and ooh,
Well, the next thing is the woolly mammoth. So what are we going to do when they're all,
yeah, I
you
know.
know,
This is
uh,
like
tromping around in the woolly mammoth? And I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but some of this is talked about in the Bible. And, it's funny that they're bringing the dire wolf back from the DNA, Jim, because I've always wondered, is it the Shroud of Turin? Is that the one that covered Jesus?
mhm.
Could they get Jesus's DNA and
I don't
recreate
think
him, and that's how he returns? I'm not, I
is that
mean, I'm being,
blasphemous that you just said that?
it's a little blasphemous, but I always wondered that. I'm like, well, maybe this is where we're going on DNA, But
Do you
this
think the
lady said,
Shroud of Turin is authentic?
well, they say it is. I
Yeah, I
don't
know.
know.
I'm just curious. There's definitely people who say it isn't.
I don't have any
I watched a
idea.
show about it. I kind of think it is.
I'm an American cattle rancher. I'm not a theologian, but I will tell you this. The lady said the dire wolves were going to be bigger than the gray wolf.
Well,
That's
yeah, that's the
scary.
whole thing. They're gigantic. The dire wolves
Jeez.
were gigantic. I think that's the whole deal.
I don't know. I never heard of a dire wolf till 2 days ago. So
Oh, really?
no.
I don't know a lot about them, but
Um,
saber tooth, what was it?
tiger.
Tiger?
Yeah.
Weren't they?
So,
There was some of them in America, I think.
um,
You ever watch Jurassic Park?
what do you think?
I feel like everyone has this movie that everyone else has seen and they haven't. I have never seen Jurassic Park.
I've never seen Jurassic Park.
Oh, I thought you were like, of course, everybody's seen that.
No, I've never. I told you I watch it, dude. If it's not Lonesome Dove and that series and Hoosiers or We Are Marshall, I don't watch any movies. I watch the
So
same
sports
movies
and
over and
cowboy.
over.
Oh, you
Oh,
watch the same movies over and over.
I bet I've watched Hoosiers at least 1,000 times in my life. I have extra copies of Hoosiers around here.
Hmm.
My favorite movie ever.
I would have
Um,
not guessed that.
yeah, oh yeah, 1985. I remember when it come out. Went to Pueblo, and watched it, and because my family was a big basketball family, and over our neighboring town, um, the biggest basketball family over there was there and sat with us on the opening night in 1985. I'll never forget, or
How
maybe it
old
was
were you?
86. It might have been 86. I was
How
10 or 12 years old.
and you were gonna be the next whatever.
Oh no.
Could go home and play in the backyard and
Oh, we played basketball all the time. Have you not ever read my story about Old 22? You need to read that story. It's an awesome story
I
about my
knew your
sister.
sisters were way better than you. That's all I
Oh
know.
yeah, I walked into the gym one day, and my when I was a freshman, and our varsity coach looks at me, and I'm shooting around, and he goes, "Dang, you sure ain't nothing compared to your sisters." Uh, okay, what else do we want to talk about? I want to talk about a little more legislation. Is that all
Oh,
right?
that sounds exciting. Let's hear it.
Okay, well, there's an EID RFID bill here in Texas that passed through the Senate, went back to the House yesterday. It was sponsored by two non-producers, no ranchers. I'm talking zero ranchers knew about the bill, um, unless they read the Independent Cattlemen's of Texas newsletter. They might have. Nobody testified against it. They called me to help with it, and I'm like, I'm on the road, but I did help them a little bit with it. It went back to the House to be heard yesterday, but they moved it to Wednesday.
What is it?
It's the RFID EID bill.
It's to mandate it or to what does it do?
So Texas is a non-brand state. Okay, so if you have a brand that you use on your cattle, you have to register it with the county, not the state. So you don't have to brand your cattle in Texas. Colorado, you have to brand your cattle. It's a brand state. Okay, so you don't have to brand them, but if you have a brand and you use it in your county, it's got to be registered with the county. What this bill does is it forces the county clerk to create a database, a digital database for RFID, EID, uh, a brand. What does a brand do? It identifies your cattle, right? So you can use ear notches, markings, whatever you want, but it lines up with the
The bill
national
creates a
mandate,
database.
huh?
Is that what you said? The bill creates a
What
database
it forces the county clerks to create a database
for
where they
EID.
will store your RFID, EID information. They have to report that data to the Texas Animal Health Commission so they know how many cattle you have, where they're at, and what you're doing. And they're not that kind of
So who
governing
came up with this
agency.
bill?
I told you, a guy, a former Democrat down on the border, who
But he
was an
doesn't just
ag.
dream this up.
Yeah, but beyond that, I don't know where it came from. I'm sure. And of course, cattle
Texas
raisers are
cattle
for
feeders.
it. They're for it. Um, I'm against it. And neither one of these guys have any connection to agriculture. One of them's from Lubbock. The other one's this,
Well,
uh,
there you go. From Lubbock,
yeah, but
Texas cattle feeders.
he's an insurance salesman in Lubbock town.
Yeah, I know, but Texas cattle feeders.
That they're in Amarillo.
No, the
I don't know.
feeders are
But it's
the.
going to hey, it's going to pass. Don't forget it. It's going to pass. Um,
So that would set an incredibly dangerous precedent for the rest of the
yes,
country.
it sure does. And it forces these county clerks into a lot more work. So they're going to have to hire more people and keep more data storage. And then they have
So,
to
and
have
you would
that
be required to have EIDs and turn in your info?
right now. If you choose to use EIDs, RFID as your identifier, you would have to turn that in. I choose not to do that.
But
I'm
anyone who is bangs vaccinating and their vet comes out and says, this is what you
absolutely.
have to use,
Now you're getting it.
then you have to turn your information into the
N-
county.
Now you're
Holy
getting it.
smokes.
Yeah. So
That seems like it should be much more popular story because that will set a
nobody knows
precedent
about
for
it.
every state.
Nobody knew about it. I mean, I texted the bill to a rancher the other day in South Texas. He's like, "What in the hell is this?" I'm like, "This is what is fixing to pass through." I wouldn't have known about it had it
Nobody knew
been
about it even after you started talking about it.
no, no.
I was
I
like, what's that
listen,
do?
Jim. I wouldn't have known about it had it not been for this Freedom Coalition in Dallas. They called me about it, and I'm like, "What?" So anyway, I helped him a little bit on that. It's going to pass. Just don't brand your cattle and don't abide by the rules. Um, big news. Let's
Great.
see. What do you think about Trump's tariffs? He just 4 hours ago he announced a 90-day pause on all tariffs except for China, and he raised them to at least, and that's what the article says, at least 125%. I love it.
I don't know. Everybody else is a tariff expert. I decided to check out on that deal.
Well, I'm not a tariff expert, but I do know
No, I'm just
this.
saying everybody that talks about it thinks they are one. And I know I'm not. And I
Listen,
know
you're
that, I mean, it seems like the billionaires are the number one people that are real wound up about this because they're losing, they're the ones with all the money in the stock market. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. They just gained $5.5 billion today in a matter of
Right.
20 minutes when the stock market on that news surged. The Dow Jones surged $2,900 and the S&P went up 474 points. That was the largest. They said at once it was up the largest in history, and I think it closed the largest uptick in 5 years. So there's that. And then I don't know any other news. I mean, there's a lot of news out there. Jim, I'm wore out. I'm just telling you, I was able to run up to Veneta, Oklahoma, in the northeast corner of Oklahoma, and speak about the war on beef to the Craig County Republicans, which, by the way, they have a sponsorship spot on this show, the Lonesome Report. Sent us a little money and said, keep doing what you're doing. They loved it. Had about 10 people come up to me and said, man, we look forward to that every day. So I was super appreciative of that. There was probably
Every
10 or
week, you mean?
15 or every week.
Hopefully they're
I'm
not looking for
sorry.
it every day.
I'm a little
I know
discombobulated.
it.
This
We have,
8:45 in the evening when you're making me get on here. It's 9:33 now. Um, anyway, it was a good receptive group. They actually had I think they said there was, I don't know, 15,000 people in the county. Um, they had about 60 people there. Most of them were small business owners and farmers and ranchers. There was a few people there. They have fought tooth and nails against wind energy power coming into their county. And there was some wind energy supporters there, but the majority of them said, hell no, we don't want it. It'll ruin your county. It's an environmental catastrophe. So that I don't know how that's going to end up, but they were super super nice, and I was glad I got to go. Got some memberships there for OSIA and Oklahoma Independent Stock Growers, and visited with like-minded people, and it was just super good. I
what
was glad
happened
I
to
got to
Trump
go.
saying we weren't going to build another windmill when he was president?
Well, they probably haven't built another windmill since he was president.
Oh, I bet they have.
Well, I mean, they had to finish their contracts.
Yeah, how long do their contracts go?
Well,
10 years? I don't know.
yeah. I mean, if they have a 10-year contract, those are going to be built and those people are going to benefit from that. I mean, they have to honor
Nobody's
those
benefiting.
contracts.
Nobody's benefiting from that.
Well, you know what I mean, the landowner. And they
Well,
might get a
somebody
new
is
and they
the
might get a new
crooks.
football field out of it, right? A
I
new
don't.
school,
New
a new
lake
football
house.
field. I do know that they had a company come in right near me here in Texas. I didn't get in on it, but some of my neighbors a mile or two north said that they were dang sure scouting the area and made some contracts with some people. But this particular family, they didn't like the ethics of the contract, so they said no, thank you,
Yeah, I
which
mean,
I thought was great.
that's the thing. Don't sign contracts without showing them to a lawyer or somebody who understands them, because they are shady. Those ones are shady. Um,
I don't know. I'm never going to have that chance. As my wife Thea would say, she's like, "It's not in the books, Dad. It's not in the books.
what's that mean?
It's not
Oh,
in the
when you want to
cards
spend money?
to make money. It's not in the cards for us, buddy."
All right. What else? What is going on? See, that's the thing. What's really going on, me and Shad talk every day, multiple times a day. It's always like, is there any update? Like, there's just no up. Have you heard from anybody in the government about this mod deal? Like, no one in the USDA, right? But the local politicians are now kind of
Yeah, it sounds like their state representatives are starting to push the governor in the mod case, and I think there's going to be some traction started on the state, maybe local and state level with that mod case. I'm sure hoping so. I mean, I haven't heard anything bad this week, but I haven't heard anything good. I don't know. I at one time I heard that they were in negotiate not the mods, but the government was working on it, and I'm like, well, that's been too long, so that wasn't true. But no, I mean, I guess maybe you and I are just too polarizing or something because um, the people that are following this mod case, and believe me, we're gaining momentum in followers and supporters on this mod case. They're just not being heard. They're just
I
not being
know.
heard. And here's the deal. Give them something. Don't let them sit out here dangling. If they're going to go ahead, I mean, I think they've got their trial for April
20
29th.
days,
Yeah, for April 29th as of
3 weeks,
now. Yeah, it starts.
less than three
Um,
weeks away.
yeah. Uh,
I just cannot imagine.
I just cannot imagine. I know if the Biden regime was still in office, I know this would be going forward just as hard and heavy
It
as they
is
want to.
now.
They were going to put him in prison. But with the change in the administration, Jim, it gave us hope. And
Right.
especially with Secretary Rollins, because she actually created and ran these liberty organizations, these things that Trump hired her on. And maybe they're getting communication that we're not hearing about. I hope that is the case. But I don't see it. I don't see what anything going on. I mean, I know Charles and Heather have to be under extreme amounts of pressure. Their kids, are worried. Their parents are worried. They're so young. That's the thing. It's here we talk about all the time getting these young people back to the farm, back on the ranch, getting them back on the land. And here's a family that raises hogs and cattle to go in to sell to their urban consumers that they've created relationships with. And from what I understand, Charles is a member of the little local fire department. He was the fire chief. And on his leadership, they got a brand new um, fire department built. And I guess it's super, super nice. It was on his leadership that they did that. Heather is a phenomenal writer. You said yourself she's had, a lot of articles go around the world. It's not like these people are sitting around thinking of illegal things to do, right? They're true American. They're turning into American icons or American heroes. That's what they're turning them into. And maybe that's a good thing. But I can guarantee you, if I was Charles and Heather Maud, I would want to continue ranching after this. But I'll tell you, it would light a fire under my butt, and I would go across the nation telling every single person what's going on. everybody
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
in
that's
my
what's
story.
why we don't have a whole lot to talk about because this is just kind of taking over
It has. It's taken over.
everything. What
The
we
good
want to do, like if we can't accomplish this, I don't know. I mean, that's what
we're
we're
going
here
to.
for. That's
We're
why
going to.
it just kind of encompasses everything we want to support and promote and just this whole
Jim,
neighborhood being taken over by federal government money through these organizations and corporations and all this BS. Um,
I'll tell you how this story has affected people. I think I've had um, 5 calls from 5 different people saying they have experienced in 5 different states, they have experienced something very similar, and it had forced them into a more in-depth study of law in the United States. And all 5 of them, every story that came out at the end, the results were the end. They understood constitutional law, they understood where we were, and and so maybe that's a gift to these people that we to all of us, that we come to understand more about how our government is run and how these deals are made, and what we can do about it. Maybe that's the deal, but it has inspired a lot of people, as you well know. And it's not just country people, it's American patriots. I've been on I think 3 podcasts now talking about the Maude case by itself. And when I was at Veneta, Oklahoma, talking to those Craig County Republicans the other night, you know what they did? At the end of the night, they asked me, "How can we help them? We want to send money to them as an organization." And so I gave them, the information to where they can send money.
yeah,
These
there
people
is a
don't.
GoFundMe. Should
Yeah,
we?
there is a GoFundMe, but these people don't know the mods. This doesn't affect the ranchers and the small business owners in Northeast Oklahoma, but it does because it captures the American
Oh
spirit.
yeah,
It hurts the heart, right?
the history, Lonesome History, because we've been so invested and I worked on that video and we Shad's driving across the country. We don't have much for Lonesome History, but I did come across something that I kind of felt like tied in a little bit to what we're talking about, which is an op-ed, but and it's I'm just going to read a little bit of it. Kind of talks about where we come from and what we're dealing with now. America's political and societal winds shifted a long time ago. Prior to the mid 70s, which would be about 50 years ago, America both respected and supported family scale farmers and ranchers who grew and raised America's food, and there were a lot of them. At the time, America had about 2.3 million farmers and ranchers. Also, prior to then, there was a keen recognition that family scale farmers and ranches were needed to provide both an economic and social foundation for communities all across the western half of the United States. But there was a problem. Nearly 50% of all the land in the western United States is federally managed, and much of the West is arid or semi arid, which is not conducive to maintaining vibrant, economical, sustainable communities when only about half of the land is available for purchase by aspiring farmers and ranchers. And so it was that America's policy prior to the mid 70s was to provide farmers and ranchers with grazing and water rights on federally managed lands so they could maintain viable farming and ranching operations all across the West. Grazing these federally managed lands, of course, had benefits beyond supporting solid economic foundation upon which rural communities would thrive and prosper. In addition, grazing helps suppress wildfires, provided an environmentally balanced ecosystem, and enabled the West to become a major producer of life's most important sustenance, meats, grains, and other foods. And going on, I guess to back out of that a little bit, when I'm reading that, I'm thinking about all the stuff I've gotten. I've gotten a ton of messages and emails. I'm sorry if I haven't got back to you, but I've gotten a bunch about, now these federal lands are, Nature Conservancy's goal is to keep production off of them. And now a lot of them are being leased strictly to hunters. And it just goes into um, kind of the direction the country's went. It's went away from supporting farmers and ranchers and into these areas. Um, This article goes on, but then something happened on the way to the grocery store. The number of farms and ranches began to decline, and America's population grew more and more distant from their agrarian roots, being farther away from many of the population's food producing ancestral farmers and ranchers. America's political leaders lost sight of the importance of sustaining vibrant rural communities in the West, and rather than encouraging farmers and ranchers to continue producing food by grazing and managing federally managed lands, the winds changed, and America's policy became that of significantly reducing, if not eliminating, farming and ranching on federally managed lands. So over the course of the last 50 or so years, there's been an exodus of farmers and ranchers from the West who once owned property rights on federally managed lands. Those rights being the right to water and the right to graze. As a result, rural communities all across the West have been hollowing out. And the reason for this, of course, is that America's politicians forgot, ignored, and neglected their responsibility to responsibly support America's family scale farmers and ranchers in all the rural communities they support in that half of the western United States where much of our food is produced on federally managed lands. Um, And all that leads us to this sordid story. In June, Charles and Heather Maude, who are ranchers from Caputa, South Dakota, were individually indicted on charges of theft of government property. The couple are accused of stealing and modifying United States Forest Serving grazing allotment that consists of about 25 acres. The Maude family has owned and managed this grazing allotment free of infraction or rule violation for over 100 years. The couple were charged separately, so they must retain two attorneys and are each facing up to 10 years in prison and fines up to $250,000. Based on the information we have today, these indictments are occurring while the government states the Maude family currently maintains their allotment in good standing. What appears to be the issue in that original fence line boundary of the Maude's allotment is not perfectly presented on the survey of the allotment that was completed over 100 years ago. Now, it is well known in the West that imperfect surveys and boundary lines are not uncommon due to rather primitive technology and harsh conditions that existed during the times of the original survey. In this new tactic, the government is employing an attempt to accelerate the eviction of Western ranchers and their property rights from federally managed lands. Or is there more to this story that is publicly available? Well, we don't know at this point, but what we do know is the Maudes are certainly not the first family to be treated like criminals in the government's ongoing effort to extinguish the property rights of ranchers who graze on federal allotments. We also know that on the surface, this appears to be an incredibly heavy-handed action by the government against family who are generationally community members and upstanding citizens and whose focus has long been on land stewardship and food production. If this action upsets you as it does us, please contact your members of Congress and ask them what in the world is going on here. That was an op-ed by Bill Bullard in the Tri-State Livestock News. I just felt like it kind of sums up pretty much everything that we were saying here. You know, like we used to be a country that supported and valued family farms and ranches, and now we have a family that is, facing prison time simply because they're a rancher and they had a boundary line with federal lands.
Well, it's the age-old story that I've always said that these things happen when you are three generations removed from the land and your food supply. There's no common sense, right? And it's a sad, sad deal. But we're going to beat them. We're going to win, and the mods are going to be free.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we can represent them in this fashion. I mean, what else can we do? I mean, it's become, for me, it's become a very personal fight, and maybe that's because I've been through that. You know, it took us uh, 5 or 6 years to fight the Nature Conservancy, and they won. They won, and I'll never forget it. And I told my dad on his, or my dad told me on his deathbed, he says, "Don't ever let that die, Shad. Get the word out." At that time, at that time in 1999, that was a $8 million lost opportunity cost for us, and that doesn't even count are investments that they stole. They just stole. And if you think, I've heard a few people say recently, or not recently, but a year ago, a guy said to me, the TNC used to be that way, Shad. They're better now. No, they're not.
No.
They're just
I mean,
better
and
at
that goes,
disguising it.
yeah, I mean, and all that writing talked about a lot about federal lands, but now seeing what we're dealing with, it's private lands too. Farmers and ranchers are not just getting kicked off federal lands, they're getting
Yeah.
kicked off of private lands because of this influx of money from the government to organizations like the Nature Conservancy. And I feel like the people of the country haven't turned their back on farmers and ranchers, but the government definitely has.
Well, and
And
there is, I mean, make no mistake, Jim, there is an anti-animal, anti-human ideology out there that is driving this bus and has a huge, huge handhold on the steering wheel. And, I'll say it again. I've said it a million times. It's not about the carbon. It's not about the methane. It's not about the climate. It's not about the cattle. It's about the land.
I'm
I'm
not.
right here with you, bro. I'm
Um,
right here with you, Jim. I'm right here with you. Can you see me?
yeah,